Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is The Middle of It, a podcast about the messy but beautiful in between parts of life. So this week changed the temperature of my house, not just the mood, but the temperature. You know how sometimes life feels normal, chaotic, but normal. And then something happens that shifts the air. This week felt like a haze. Like when we just had that huge ice storm, everything came to a standstill, right? Nobody could drive and no one could get through the ice, the 6 inches of ice outside. Ice melt wasn't available in any stores and you couldn't go anywhere, even if you wanted to. That's what this week has been. It's been this emotional ice over everything. There was a tragic loss in my daughter's community. I'm not going to share details of that. It's not my story to tell. I will say that when something like this happens in a school, it doesn't stay contained. It moves. It moves through the hallways, through friend groups, group chats, through parents' kitchens, dinner tables, through bedrooms late at night. And it moves into homes like mine, and it changes the tone. I actually had a fun episode planned to be released on Friday, and I just couldn't do it. Not because joy isn't allowed, but because it felt like pretending, like moving past something that felt big. And if this podcast is about anything, it's about not pretending and not skipping the middle. And this week, the middle is grief. One of the first things I noticed was how differently everyone was processing the grief. Some of the kids were visibly shattered, best friends, teammates, kids who shared daily life. And then there were others who were just quiet. Some seemed unaffected. Some were anxious. Some were suddenly asking questions about safety, about mortality, what happens if, dot, dot, dot. And what struck me most was that even kids who had never met him were impacted. I actually had a conversation with one of the counselors at the school, and she said something that stuck with me. Some of the kids were asking her, "Why does this hurt so much if I didn't really know him?" And her response was that it's sad. They're sad. I'm sad. A lot of people are sad who didn't know him because it's a sad thing. And it hit me that we want grief to make sense. We want to categorize it. But the reality is that grief doesn't follow logic. Some kids are grieving the person, some are grieving the shock, some are grieving a loss of their innocence. Some are grieving the realization that they are not invincible. And for some teenagers, this might be the first time that death feels real for their age group. It's not a grandparent or someone else that's older, it's a peer. And that changes something inside of them. Let's talk about why that hits so hard, because I did some research on it. Teen brains are still developing. The emotional center of the brain, the amygdala, is highly active during adolescence. It's strong, it reacts fast. But the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reasoning, impulse control, long term thinking, that's not fully developed until around age 25. So when something traumatic or shocking happens, emotion hits first, hard, and regulation comes second. That's why teen grief can look so messy. It's not that they're being dramatic, it's neurological. When mortality enters the room at 14, 15, 16, it doesn't get filtered through decades of life experience. At 40, we know life is fragile. At 15, you still feel infinite. So when a peer dies, The brain can go into fight or flight, hypervigilance, anxiety. Some teens suddenly worry, what if something happens to me? What if something happens to one of my best friends? What if I don't wake up? Others avoid it completely. Some become more cautious. Some become more reckless. Because sometimes when mortality feels real, the brain tries to regain control by pretending it doesn't exist. And then layer social media on top of that. They are grieving in real time publicly, constantly exposed. Photos, videos, comments, speculation, tributes. There is no break for their nervous system, and that matters. I also want to talk about guilt because teens often carry it silently. I should have known. I should have said something. I should have texted or checked in. Even if logically they know they couldn't have changed anything. The adolescent brain is wired for intense relationships. Friendships feel enormous at that age. So when something tragic happens, the brain tries to regain control by rewriting the past. If I could have done something differently, maybe this wouldn't have happened. That illusion of control feels safer than helplessness, but it also becomes crushing. And as parents, we need to say out loud, you are not responsible for something you could not see. You are not responsible for something you could not control. And sometimes you're going to have to say it more than once. Now let's talk about parents because we grieve differently. We think about the other parents. We imagine the unimaginable. We want to wrap our arms around people we've never met. And then there's the thought we don't like to admit. That could be us. This past week, I went to go see Hamilton with my friend and my older daughter. And when It's Quiet Uptown played, it cut through very differently. I've heard the song time and time again, and it wasn't even one I ever really paid attention to. But watching Eliza and Alexander grieve, it felt different because I knew somewhere parents in my community were living that reality. And one tragic moment separated me from them. Just one. And that awareness changes how you hold your own children. It made me softer in an instant, slower, more intentional. Our school put resources in place, and that mattered. We have been utilizing them. And at home, I made a conscious decision. I would not force the conversation. And that was definitely uncomfortable for me because clearly I like to talk. I tried at first. I'll be 100% honest about that. But I could feel it. When I pushed, she closed. It was like a door slamming. So I stopped pushing. Support is not interrogation. It's when I realized it's availability. So I did what I've researched on what to do, and it's talking side by side. We talked in the car. I sat and watched her watch a show and kind of silently folded laundry, and we let silence exist. And when she wanted to talk, she did. Sometimes holding space is more powerful than filling it. So let's talk about how to talk to our teens. If you're navigating this, here are some things that help. Instead of saying, how are you feeling? Try, what's this week been like at school? What are people saying? What feels hardest for you? If they say, I'm fine, you can respond, okay, I believe you. And if you're not, I'm here. If they shut down, try proximity instead of pressure. Drive somewhere. Walk down the street with your dog if you have one. Do dishes next to each other, or like me, laundry. Side by side is less threatening for them than face to face. Validate without dramatizing. That makes sense. I can see why you feel that way. This is a lot. You don't need the perfect words. You just need a regulated presence. Your calm nervous system will lend stability to theirs. But what about when the grief isn't turning a corner? Grief is normal. But if you're seeing persistent hopelessness, major sleep changes, appetite changes, withdrawing from everyone, loss of interest in things, talking about feeling like a burden, escalating risk taking, or even talking about death in a personal way, that's when you step in more actively. You can say, I've noticed some changes and I care about you too much not to ask. If you are worried about safety, ask directly. Have you had thoughts about hurting yourself? Research shows asking does not plant the idea. It opens the door. If they say yes, do not leave them alone. Remove access to harmful items. Call your pediatrician, contact school counselors, or even you can call or text 988, which is the U.S. Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Act, because safety matters more than discomfort. But what if it's not your child? If your kid is saying that a friend is struggling, do not promise secrecy. Let them know that you care too much to keep this quiet if someone isn't safe. Contact a school counselor, a coach, the friend's parent. It might feel awkward, but I would rather have an awkward conversation than regret silence. Community protection requires courage. We cannot only talk about mental health when tragedy happens. This has to be ongoing. In business, we talk about proactive versus reactive, right? So this is where we need to get proactive. Schools need ongoing mental health education, consistent counseling access, anonymous reporting systems. Kids need safe adults. Coaches matter. Good teachers matter. Mentors matter. Sports even matter. Structure regulates their nervous system. And this past weekend, when Farah had her cheer competition, these girls honored their friend by putting something on their shoes that was special to them, standing together out on that mat, doing their competition. I saw them just completely together and in it, their community. And I had to hold back the tears because I knew how heavy their week had been. But they showed up anyway. They are overcoming. And that matters. If your child doesn't have a community, make that your mission. Sports, clubs, music, youth groups, volunteer work. Belonging can be protective. Isolation is dangerous. We cannot let these kids navigate life alone. If you are parenting through something heavy, you are not alone. If you are a teen carrying something too big, please tell someone. And if your community is shaken like mine, keep holding each other. Share this episode with someone who might need it, because grief grows in silence, but it softens in connection. And if you're in my community, I love you. I care. I'm here. We don't skip the hard parts here. We don't rush grief. We don't hide pain. We walk through it together. And if you're in the middle of something heavy right now, I'm right there with you. Until next time, let's keep going.